What are we talking about today? It's the moment you've been waiting for. We're talking about reproduction and development, not just of humans, but of all these organisms. Are you ready? Get those notes out. Let's go. All right. Reproduction and development, what does that mean? We're going to take a cell from, let's talk about asexual reproduction for a moment. Are we going to talk about, we're going to talk about asexual reproduction first. So I was trying to get you excited about sexual reproduction, but first we must talk about those that can have reproduction with themselves. Okay, so videos, if you're not excited yet, we've got the chapter here from our book, and then development from Crash Course, which is pretty good, except it goes really fast. And I love this image of there's all different ways to have sex and to take care of the babies and the fertilized eggs. And so seahorses, the male seahorse carries around a big sack, I think in his belly, to protect all the fertilized eggs. So he's the protector. So we have to give up those ideas that, this one does that, the other one does this, because it depends on which organism you are. Okay, so first of all, asexual reproduction is where you make a clone of yourself. And the question that a lot of people have is, how did sexual reproduction come into play? And why is sexual reproduction so important? And so, so what is sexual reproduction? It's that there's two individuals or more, two individuals that will be contributing, two individuals' DNA will be contributing to the offspring, okay, to the zygote. Now, what is a zygote? A zygote is an egg and a sperm. They come together and they're making this new individual. That new individual will have a bunch of cells that divide and become that organism. Okay, so one of the things that so sperm and egg, they are from separate parents, they fuse, they make an egg or a zygote, fertilized egg, not like eggs that you eat, but a fertilized egg. And they undergo repeated cell divisions and then make an offspring, like these toads here. The offspring gets genes from both parents, gets DNA from both parents. Okay, so they're not cloning. They're not like genetically identical to either one of the parents. And if you took like a cell biology class, you'd learn that it's actually not 50-50 like everybody thinks. It can be that you're more like your dad, the parent that produced testosterone or the parent that produced estrogen. You could be more like either one. It actually doesn't have to be 50-50. It tends to be near 50-50, but because of some events that happen, it actually may not be exactly 50-50. So all those lies that we heard. But anyway, sexual reproduction. So this talks about external fertilization, which we will mention. But sexual reproduction is really what we're getting at right now, which is why sex? Why is sexual reproduction? What are the advantages of it? Now, I'm not talking about the act. Stay with me here. I'm not talking about the act of sexual reproduction. I'm talking about why would something like this evolve, adapt, call it whatever you want. It's a question. Why not just make clone copies? Why use sexual reproduction? It is so pervasive. It's so common. It's so used. Animals, 99% of animals use sexual reproduction. Okay. You have to go find a mate. You have to find a mate you like. Yeah. I mean, it's a real problem. It's not like sexual reproduction is not like, oh, this is easy. It's not easy. I have a whole book. Where is it? I don't know, but I have a whole book on the evolution or adaptation of beauty and what beauty means in other, non-humans. They end up relating it to humans, but in birds, in reptiles, and I mean, this whole idea of sexual reproduction is expensive. It costs a lot for the organism. It's hard to find a mate. It's work. And yet we see it. There has to be a reason. There has to be a reason behind this. So I want us to think about that during class, okay? I want you to think about this. Okay, yeah, and the last little piece here, it says, might there be other ways to exchange genes? Sexual reproduction doesn't have to be the way it is. You know, we could, as cloned individuals, we could put our fingers together and swap a little bit of DNA, like for eye color, for hair color. I mean, there's all kinds of ways that this could be done, and yet it's not. So I want you to step outside of the box about what is and say what could have been, what could be, and why is it the way it is? Okay, pretty cool. Okay, so there's a video, which I'm not going to watch with you right now, but I would like you to watch the video. And it basically goes over external and internal fertilization. So, you know, external fertilization, you have to have water. And so external fertilization means one of the parents is going to dump the sperm, and one of the parents is going to dump a bunch of eggs. Or they might dump eggs and like collect them all, put them together. But external fertilization means that the sperm and the eggs are outside of the bodies, okay? So like we have betta fish, and the male and the female, they would release so fish do this. They would release the egg and the sperm, and then actually the male makes a little bubble sac for the eggs up top. But that's still external fertilization, right? Outside, even if you take care of the eggs and put them somewhere, the fertilization itself is outside the body. So what are the advantages of that? What are the advantages of internal fertilization? These are things that you need to think about. With external fertilization, I want you to think also about sexual reproduction and how many genes, because if there are many males around during external fertilization, let's say a female fish releases a bunch of eggs and there's a bunch of males around, we're going to produce fertilized eggs that have a lot of different genes, right? Rather than just producing one individual. So there are some trade-offs here about external and internal. You might immediately think internal is so much better, but there are advantages to external. So, and then it talks about how did sharks contrast with eels, salmon, and tuna, contrast the disadvantages of both strategies. So it's mostly just about internal and external fertilization. One last piece, how does the term parental investment, I don't even see it on our notes, I'm going to put it in our notes. How does the term parental investment relate to internal and external fertilization, internal and external development? So parental investment is, what do the parents do with the fertilized, once the egg is fertilized, what's the care situation? Do they just take off like salmon once they have spawned, once they have released the eggs, released the sperm, they build all these little, the eggs will be in these little pockets inside the stream, kind of at the bottom, but they're gone. The parents are going to die. So they're not going to take care of them. Or contrast that with the seahorse, where it's still external fertilization, but the male carries around those fertilized eggs. That's a little more parental investment, isn't it? Yeah. Compare that with a mammal or a bird. Most birds are intensively parental. So they'll even, and this is something that humans don't do that well, but a lot of birds will use cousins, an extended family, really well to help feed the babies. So they get into really big bird groups like chickadees. They get into these big bird groups and help each other. Humans sometimes do that, and that's very successful. So anyway, just thinking about parental investment. And we tend to see parental investment more with internal fertilization, but, tend to, yeah. Okay, external fertilization, which organisms use this strategy? We're going to put this in the chat. Is water always needed? Pretty much, I mean, you don't have to be in a body of water, but you need water there. So some organisms, like I'm sure there's some organisms in the tropics where there's water on leaves and they put the sperm and egg in the leaf. But pretty much water is needed. Yes. It doesn't have to be an open body of water like an ocean. We can do it in streams. And so Which organisms use this strategy? So I want you to think about this. I know you know fish, but are there any other organisms? Any other groups? Think about that. Like, what other groups might be using that when we think of our groups? And it turns out it's weird. I mean, we're not going to go through all of the invertebrates. A lot of invertebrates use external fertilization. There are exceptions, like insects are weird. A lot of them do internal because, insects are their own thing. Arthropods, they're their own thing. They do their own thing, don't they? They have adapted and evolved and done crazy things. But a lot of invertebrates are external. If you're in the water, right, you're external. So I want you to think about which organisms, which groups use this strategy. Okay. Okay, internal fertilization. So this little link right here, it's a short video. Oops, we're not going to actually watch the video. Sorry, we're not actually going to watch the video, but you're going to watch the video. It's short, it's super short, and it just shows ladybugs. Ladybug mating. And basically the ladybug mating, right? Internal fertilization. It's weird. Most invertebrates, though, do use external, okay? And most vertebrates use internal. Not all of them, fish, sharks are weird, they use internal fertilization. So if you're in water and you're a vertebrate, you may be using external fertilization. I want you to think about that. If you're in water, changes the game because you have that water there. What are the other reasons for internal fertilization? This is a great question. What are the other reasons, not just about parental investment, but what are the other reasons for internal fertilization? Why is this a good strategy? Yes, if you're on land, what other reasons? Okay. Sperm anatomy. Okay, sperm anatomy. Sperm is probably one of the most specialized cells that exists on the planet. And the reason why is it's a little powerhouse. It's a little machine, isn't it? And they're really beautiful. They have this gorgeous tail, this flagella, and then they have this midsection that's just a bunch of mitochondria. What do mitochondria do? If you remember that from 101, they have a bunch of mitochondria are mighty. They create energy. They create ATP. And so they have this little machine, powered machine. And then up at the top, this is where the DNA is. And I'm not going to ask you for the names of these, but I'd like you to know a little bit, like, why is this thing so specialized? We went from the stem cells that produce sperm cells just look like a blob. And what we have to do is create a very streamlined, we end up, shaving off the top, get rid of the jelly, the cytoplasm, put on a tail, create this mitochondria, this powerhouse that's in the middle. It's a really complicated process. So we should really think about how cool sperm are. They really are. We take them for granted because we make so many of them. Most organisms make a lot of sperm, but we take them for granted. Give it up for the sperm. How many human sperm started? Okay, so the journey of the sperm, you're going to watch this video just for we start at 2 minutes and you just want to get it's kind of amazing. How many human sperm start the journey? Maybe you already know how many, just millions, right? Other animals do not always have similar sperm counts, reading from Tatiana's sex advice book. Okay, so I have a book on all these different organisms, and there's all these different ways of mating and reproduction and sperm counts. And so some organisms make very few sperm, and the sperm are big, and you don't need that many sperm. And some organisms make way more sperm than humans do. So I'm going to read probably something to you from Tatiana's sex advice book. It's so funny. It's such a funny book. So it's like a Dear Diary. Dear Diary, it was one of the ones was a praying mantis. And so, Dear Diary, after I mated with my partner, I ate him. It's super funny. So I will read a little bit about that. Now, what do you want to know for, what do you need to know for the test and all that? I think it's more just, I'd like you to just kind of think about, step outside of the box step outside of the human box. Not everybody creates the same number of sperm as us. Not everybody creates, you know, and they all have different strategies. And those strategies aren't less than what we are doing. And I think that's just something I hope we come out of 103 with. It's just like a little bit of an awe, like, wow, there are lots of different ways to do this. There's not one way to do sexual reproduction. Okay, we're going to start talking about development. I wanted to get you excited. Look at these cute little polar bears. And look at this little penguin. Oh my goodness. And the penguin looks like it's kind of trying to say something to him. I can't remember which species of penguin this is. I love penguins. But that reproductive structure, it's not a primary reproductive structure, but this right here, this little tuft, that is for the other individuals. Look at me, I am good looking. So if there was no sexual reproduction, you wouldn't see that tuft, that yellow tuft, because that individual, right, might get eaten because of that tuft, but it's important to look pretty. In birds, a lot of times it's important as a male to look pretty. Yeah, pretty cool. Okay, so development. Start with a single cell so you've got the single cell, you've got the sperm and egg that come together. Single cell, you're going to start with one cell. It's got the DNA from both parents. Okay. And what do you end up with? When it's all done, you end up with a whole individual. How does this happen? This is the question to development. You got one cell. How does it know how to become a human? How does it know to become a polar bear? One cell? Well, the instructions are inside, right? The instructions are inside. The instructions to lay out the body are inside. How are all these instructions in one cell? It's amazing. And you're 37 trillion. So how do we do this is the question. And we're going to have to get a couple terms. It's okay. So one of the things we're going to do is divide. And so the first thing that will happen during development is you have one cell and it's just going to divide into a bunch of cells. These cells are called stem cells, and I'll show you what they look like on the next slide. But stem cells are cells that can become anything. They can become bone, they can become skin, they can become hair, they can become your nose, they can become your tear duct, they can become your eyelashes. So in the beginning, and this is all the beginning of all animals, in the beginning when those cells are dividing, they're stem cells, and these stem cells can become anything. They can become teeth, they can become gums, they can become a nose. So this is the same with all organisms. They have these stem cells. And then later on during development, those stem cells will decide who they want to be. And this is called differentiation. Differentiation is, I decided I'm going to be a liver. Not even kidding. I'm going to be a liver cell, right? Or I decided I'm going to be in somebody's nail bed. I've decided that. That's who I'm going to be. That's my life. Once a stem cell decides what it's going to be, it will differentiate into that organ, whatever it is. It will differentiate into that. Isn't that cool? That's how it happens. And then we'll get things like organs, like I'm going to be a liver. Okay. So the question then is, how can genetically identical cells how can these stem cells differentiate, become into all these different structures? And before we do this listing, the answer is every cell has all the DNA of your entire makeup. Every cell, we have to pack something like 6 meters. If we were to take it out of the cell, I'm not even kidding, 6 meters is whatever, 18 feet. We pack all this DNA in, we coil it up and we pack all this DNA into each cell. It's the DNA for your whole body. It's the DNA to be a nose, a mouth, a tooth, the hair. Somehow each cell picks the right sequence of DNA. I'm going to become a hair cell, or I'm going to become a liver cell. And so they pick the right DNA. They pick the right DNA to use to become that cell. Okay, so they have all the DNA, but somehow they know when they differentiate, they know who to become. This is This is what people are studying in development. This is how they're trying to figure it out. On the chat, list special structures in birds and humans. What are some organs? What are some structures that we have? What might be things that cells want to differentiate into? What do we need the DNA for? What are these stem cells going to become? Okay. You definitely want to watch this video, and we'll probably, we might not have time, but we'll try. This video is about master genes or homeobox genes. Probably this is a better word to use, I think. Homeobox genes are genes, or DNA, that tell the cells how to lay the body out, how to become a liver, how, we'll put a liver here, we'll put a nose here, we'll put a forehead here, we'll put some hair here. So they lay out the body plan of the individual. So you need to watch this video because this is really important, these homeobox genes, okay? Cool, we'll talk about it in class 2. What are stem cells? They're cells that can become anything. And you can see here's a stem cell. What's it going to be? I don't know. It depends on what it differentiates into. It can differentiate into a fat cell, a bone cell, a blood cell, right? All of these things. It can differentiate into all these. What role do they play? They're the beginning, right? They're the beginning. So at the beginning, it's just a bunch of stem cells, and then those stem cells start becoming toes, start becoming blood vessels, okay? Very cool. How do they know what to become? They know what to become because of homeobox genes. So that's your answer. Watch that video. They know what to become as a stem cell. They know what to differentiate into because homeobox genes tell them. And that's everybody. Birds, us, reptiles, amphibians, sharks. Everyone, invertebrates. Yeah. So there's a lot of videos, I'm sorry. I want you to watch this because I don't like the chapter in the book. Watch this video with Hank. It's a crash course video. And we might take some notes, and it might help us by taking notes. So take a note and write your name and a comment in this document, and then we'll put it together. We'll work together. So before I see you in class, click on this document, watch the video, click on this document, and write down some comment from Hank's video and put your name next to it. And we'll look through all of these together. And we'll decide what we want to put in our lecture notes or whatever, okay? Yay. So, okay, so I wanted to look at our notes. One last thing that we didn't cover is, what is the lifespan of a human given medical technology? And so one of the things that we want to talk about, just as we're talking about development, kind of the lifespan, like what happens. So we have all these cells. And what I want you to think about is that the human lifespan has really increased greatly over the last, 200 years. Why is that? And what does that mean about our genes? Just a little bit there. What does that mean about our genes? If our lifespan can be greatly increased. So not too much. We won't talk too much about it. I think we're pretty much done, and I will see you in class. It's a lot of videos to watch. Thank you for staying.